Hi, friends. All right, we're starting our new read aloud today. The vote was very close. In fact, the winner only won by one vote. Um, the second place book was The Magic Finger by Roald Dahl. So I'm glad that you guys liked Roald Dahl, the author of the BFG, and perhaps he's an author that you can read in the future. Either now when you're doing ZBR at home or over the summer or in future years. He's a great author. He wrote a lot of classics, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Glass Elevator, Matilda. There's a ton of great books by him, and several of them have been turned into movies. I know some of you like to do that, like we did this year. So the winner is, that's my drum roll, The Adventures of Captain Underpants, the first epic novel by Dave Pilkey. I'll reread you the blurb on the back. George and Harold have created the greatest superhero in the history of their elementary school, and now they're going to bring him to life. Meet Captain Underpants, whose true identity is so secret, even he doesn't know who he is. The Adventures of Captain Underpants. Tra la la! There is a table of contents with the title of each chapter. Chapter 1 is called George and Harold. Meet George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the kid on the left with the tie and the flat top. Flat top is that haircut that looks flat on the top. Harold is the one on the right with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. And it says flower shop, pick your own roses. George and Harold were best friends. They had a lot in common. They lived right next door to each other, and they were both in the same fourth grade class at Jerome Horowitz Elementary School. George and Harold were usually responsible kids. Whenever anything bad happened, George and Harold were usually responsible. You get it? If something bad happened, they were the ones responsible for it. But don't get the wrong idea about these two. George and Harold were actually very nice boys, no matter what everybody else thought. They were good, sweet, and lovable. Well, okay, maybe they weren't so sweet and lovable, but they were good nonetheless. And here we have George and Harold, and notice the sign no longer says pick your own roses. It says pick our noses. It's just that George and Harold had a silly streak a mile long. Usually that silly streak was hard to control. Sometimes it got them into big trouble. Sometimes it got them into trouble, and once it got them into big, big trouble. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. That's the end of the chapter, but it's short, so we'll read another one. Chapter 2, Treehouse Comics, Inc. After a hard day of cracking jokes, pulling pranks, and causing mayhem at school, George and Howard liked to rush to the old treehouse in George's backyard. Inside the treehouse, there were two big old fluffy chairs, a table, a cupboard crammed with junk food, and a padlock crate filled with pencils, pens, and stacks of paper. Pretty cool treehouse. Now Harold loved to draw, and George loved to make up stories, and together the two boys spent hours and hours writing and drawing their very own comic books. Over the years, they had created hundreds of their own comics, starring dozens of their own superheroes. First, there was Dogman. Then came Timmy the Talking Toilet. And who could forget the amazing Cow Lady? But the all-time greatest superhero they made up had to be the amazing Captain Underpants. George came up with the idea. Most superheroes will look like they're flying around in their underwear, he said. Well, this guy actually is flying around in underwear. The two boys laughed and laughed. Yeah, said Harold, he could fight with wedgie power. George and Harold spent entire afternoons writing and drawing the comic adventures of Captain Underpants. He was their coolest superhero ever. Luckily for the boys, the secretary at Jerome Horowitz Elementary School was much too busy to keep an eye on the copy machine. So whenever they got a chance, George and Harold would sneak into the office and run off several hundred copies of their latest Captain Underpants adventure. Do you think Mrs. Jimenez would let you do that? I think she'd notice. After school, they sold their homemade comics on the playground for 50 cents each. We're going to stop there. We have one more picture of them selling their comics on the playground for 50 cents each. All right, my friends, the next chapter is titled the adventures of Captain Underpants. So we're really going to get into it tomorrow. I hope you like our quick introduction to Captain Underpants. I hope you like our new read aloud. See you tomorrow.